shots that they're going to need to fall the rest of the season, because both Nebraska and Creighton have huge, I would say, season-defining 5-game stretches coming up.
Yeah.
It'll look a little different for Creighton. Again, these are two teams now as we turn to February. Insane to say. As we turn to February, these are two teams that are playing for entirely different things at this point. But their next 5 games, respectively, are going to be huge toward both of those goals.
Yeah.
Creighton now sits behind Marquette and St. John's, both currently 9-1 in the conference. Creighton is 8-2, UConn is 7-3, and then the rest of the pack is kind of a couple games back. Starting with Villanova, which Creighton plays that Saturday morning. We'll talk about, I guess, those specific matchups in a second, the next upcoming games. But these 5-game stretches. So Creighton is currently sitting in 3rd, and the Jays go to Villanova Saturday, to Providence. They have not won at Providence since January 21, so that's going to be a really tough place to win. Then they host back-to-back in the span of 4 days, Marquette and UConn.
That's a gauntlet.
And then Wilson, just to cap this off, they go to Madison Square Garden to play St. John's.
Yeah, that feels pretty season defining.
Yeah. So, you're going to get 2, especially Villanova, not so much Providence, but you're going to get 2. I don't know if you can call Nova a bubble team anymore. I don't know. But if Nova wants to be a bubble team, they have to win. They have to beat Creighton Saturday morning. And then, again, it's going to be super tough for Creighton, let alone anybody, to go into AMP and beat Providence. And then the huge 3 that will really, really, really define the top of the Big East is the Marquette, UConn, St. John's stretch. I mean, that's gonna either pull you closer to Marquette and St. John's, or it's going to let UConn get back in the race, or whatever happens is going to happen over the next, 17 days. Yeah. And at that point, there will only be 5 games left in the regular season for the Jays. So I don't know what's going to happen. Ken Pom has them going 2-3 in that stretch, winning at Providence and beating UConn at home. Has them losing by a point at Villanova, at Marquette, and losing at St. John's by 7.
Yeah.
So all of those games are a coin flip, and they're not projected to blow out Providence or UConn either, might I add. All 5 of these, I'd say, are pretty much a coin flip. And we'll see, where the dice fall in 17 days. Because then Creighton will have a week off before the end of the regular season. But if Nebraska, again, 2 entirely different teams playing for 2 entirely different things at the moment, Nebraska's trying to save its season, really. Yeah. Make it back to the NCAA tournament for a second straight year. And the Huskers are at Oregon, at Washington, home against Ohio State, home against Maryland, and then they go to the road to play Northwestern.
Yeah.
That, Creighton, season-defining stretch right here.
I think even more so, that at Oregon, that's tough. If you win that, that's a gigantic win. But
put it. What would you say? That's their 3rd best win this year?
If they beat
maybe second.
Second or 3rd, yeah. I think their best is on the road at Creighton.
Absolutely.
And UCLA.
That was the It's at home.
Was good. UCLA was good, and then they were bad, and now they're good again.
Yeah. But if you go to Oregon, and win in Eugene, now you're talking.
Yeah. But after that, the games you mentioned: Washington, Ohio State, Maryland, Northwestern, and then Penn State. After that, those are 5 winnable games, and I think Nebraska has to win at least 4 of them, maybe all 5. Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance,
And you probably can't lose at home.
No, yeah.
Like a home loss will kill you at this point.
Yeah.
Ben McCollum shout out Drake basketball. I like to think this time of year, and something Ben McCollum told me when I was at Northwest, you really count your wins on, like, if you get a home win, you don't, like, it doesn't count.
Fred was talking about a similar thing, that a home win and a road loss are both 0.
Correct.
A road win is +1, and a home loss is -1.
Yeah. So I don't know where this came from, but Ben McCollum talked about that, and that's kind of, I think, shaped how I view this time of year and conference standings and whatever. So that's interesting that Fred's talked about it too, because that's probably going to, long meandering point, that's going to come in play for Nebraska this time of year. Yeah. You need to be plus.
Yeah. They got to finish these next. They got to finish these next 6 games positive.
Correct. Probably 4 the next 6.
Yeah. I think, and I think with how good the Big Ten is this year, 9-11 in conference with a win or 2 in Indianapolis, I think that gets you into the tournament. I think that gets you into at least Dayton,
Yeah.
So I think that's, that's the target for Nebraska, and it's just like Nebraska has lost some games they should have won, and they can't afford to do that anymore.
No.
The margin is slim. If they had beaten Rutgers, they had beaten USC, like, those were games they were supposed to win, and they lost. Now they've got after Oregon, 5 games that they can win, and they have to take all of them. Like, this is it.
Absolutely.
This is do or die time for Nebraska, and the last night was a huge step in that. The Fred talked about this. The players have talked about this. Basically that point that, like, it's now or never. Elvis Presley, it's now or never. But they took down the standings in the locker room. Like, they used to have the Big Ten standings up there, and they took them down, and the only names they left up were Nebraska and Illinois. And that, other things like that. They watched tape of the bench from earlier in the year at how, like, engaged and jumping up and excited the bench was, and their body language. Like, this was all going into the Illinois game. Like, like Fred said, every game has to be the Super Bowl from here on out, and that's where they are. Every cliche you can throw against the, backs against the wall, whatever, that is where
it is.
Nebraska is right now.
It's almost like, obviously not, because you for now you live to see tomorrow. Maybe your tournament chances don't, but you have another game to look forward to no matter what happens. But it's essentially Nebraska is playing NCAA tournament games.
Survive in advance.
Like, if this is a team that wants to make it back to the tournament, hadn't made it in a decade, right? Made it last year. If they want to, I think, take a pretty big step in the right direction and get back for a second straight year, a win at Oregon would go a long way toward doing that and starting this stretch off on the right foot. What do the Huskers have to do to get one in Eugene on Sunday?
They got to take care of the ball.
Okay.
They got to rebound. Okay. None of these are especially
sure.
And they gotta handle adversity. That's been an issue for Nebraska in that 6-game losing streak.
It is going to happen.
It is.
You are on the road.
You're on the road against a ranked team. They're gonna make a run at some point. They're gonna score 8 in a row.
Correct.
At some point, and Nebraska did not handle that well in previous games, and they got to do a better job with it against Oregon.
Yeah, those spurts are when you saw Wisconsin snowball.
Yeah.
And when Purdue kind of was progressive. I mean, that was.
And Purdue just shot the lights out too.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's where Rutgers kind of got away from them. You know.
Had that late surge.
Yeah.
A little too much to keep chipping away at. And Ace Bailey was he's a dog for sure.
Yeah.
But no, I think it'd be huge if Nebraska can. They have a 31% chance of winning at Oregon per Ken Palm.
Yeah.
and it's only a 5-point. Like Ken Pom only has it as a 5-point game.
Ken Pom is pretty like conservative on those estimates. Yeah, I feel like
It
Ken
is.
Pom always has, like has it close.
Yeah.
But yeah. Like
No, I think they sure could. Creighton Villanova will be interesting Saturday morning. It'll be another weekend full of basketball on each end of I-80. Last year, again, Nova's a tough place to play too. Last year, the Jays went to Philly or Villanova, Pennsylvania, close, and needed Trey Alexander's buzzer beater.
Villanova is a city?
Dude, I think so. Isn't it?
I did not know that. Dylan says yes.
Villanova, Pennsylvania, 8,400. Yeah, I just looked this up for that story.
Dylan already knew that?
Yeah. So it's a tough place to play. They play their games where the Sixers play in Philly.
Okay. I've been to that arena.
Yeah. So that's where what is it?
Wells Fargo
Wells
Arena.
Fargo.
Yeah.
They play at Wells Fargo. Haven't been out there. So it's a tough place to play. It's always a good game. Has been when Jay Wright was there, obviously. Has been since Kyle Neptune took over, even though his teams have not been as good as Jay Wright's were. It's just always a tough game, always a tough place to play for Creighton. They needed Trey Alexander to hit a shot at the buzzer right before the buzzer last year, and that's kind of how they escaped Philly last year. Can they do it again? I'm not sure. Again, Villanova is one of those teams that needs, and then needs marquee wins to even have a chance at being on the bubble. And now, ironically enough, the Hunters have become the hunted, and Creighton has that target on its back because it's won 6 straight and 8 of 9 since that Georgetown loss. So it's going to be a big one. This is the last scheduled meeting between Ryan Kalkbrenner and Eric Dixon. Creighton fans just let out a huge sigh of relief because some of it, I think like half of Eric Dixon's top 12 scoring games have been against Creighton.
Really?
He does not miss when the Jays are in town, which it's kind of like a lot of teams will try and stretch out Creighton to pull Ryan Kalkbrenner out of the paint, and they'll tell their big man to let a couple of them fly because
you got to get that in their mind. Yeah.
And Eric Dixon just doesn't. He's not shooting to space the defense. He is shooting to keep Villanova in the game. Yeah. And so we'll see if he can do that one more time. If he can help Villanova upset Creighton, because that is one that the Wildcats very badly need. Yeah. I've got one last thing for you, Wilson.
Hit me with it.
Today's pressing question. So we have made quite the fuss about post-game memes. Really for the last few weeks. Yeah. Like we were out to eat.
Yeah. You didn't know about the whole Nebraska thing.
No, like 2-3 weeks ago. I didn't know it was that in depth. Yeah. When Wilson informed me that whoever Nebraska plays, and Creighton does this a little bit, but I don't think to the extent that Nebraska has, or at least what you've shown me. Nebraska beats Illinois, let's say. The Nebraska Twitter community will go into Illinois' final tweet and just spam it with memes like, you just lost to Farmer Andrew Morgan or something. And I kind of got skin in the game this week as far as that goes on the Creighton side. Long story short, I posted a really good picture that Megan Nielsen took, our OWH photographer. She covered the Creighton Xavier game. Jemiah Neal, unreal dunk in the first half, caught a body, put it on someone's head, and she got a really good picture of the bench kind of like in shock. And in that, Fedor Zugic is like, oh my God, is in the surrender cobra. Yeah. And I tweeted that because I thought it was a really funny picture. And somebody responded and said, well, somebody's going to deep fry this, for those of you who don't know. Just turn the contrast and brightness and sharpness detail all the way up and then save that photo and then put it back in and continue to turn all of it up. They said somebody's going to deep fry this and put it under an opposing team's final post. And so I just deep fried it right then and there. No questions asked. All of this to say, what is your favorite post-game Nebraska meme on Twitter?
That's a tough one because there are so many options.
There are.
I am going to go with, I think, the original one I showed you because it made me genuinely laugh.
Okay.
You just lost to Berke Bukdengel with the Turkish national anthem playing in the background at a just like blown out, like disproportional level.
Yeah.
That one makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, that's good because it's a lot of them are just like pictures.
Yeah.
But the ones that are videos, those are usually another tier up.
Yeah.
Because you can do more. Just simply, you could do music. You could add whatever. Selfishly, I'd like to submit the one I deep fried into this category. Might be a little self-absorbed. That's okay. But then once I posted the deep fried photo, I don't even know why they call it that.
Yeah, I didn't know that was the phrase until you just said it.
Yeah. So once I posted the deep fried photo, another person responded and said, "Oh, this needs something like, oh, Fedor, can't believe your team sucks." And I was like, I know what I have to do. And so I think for those of you watching it on omaha.com, which you should, you can listen to it, I guess.
I mean, if you really want, you really want to see our faces? Like,
that's fair. Yeah. If you have weathered the storm of our faces for some 30 minutes now, and you've reached this point, maybe our good buddy Dylan will put the Fedor Zugic meme on screen. And if you're listening on your, as we said last week, either local podcast provider or the vinyl that you bought,
which we put out every week.
Of course, we press them
by ourselves,
and make memes. You can go over to By John Walker on X, I suppose.
I still call it Twitter.
I call it Twitter too. It's like, okay, who cares? It's not X. I don't know. You got anything else, Wilson?
I don't think so.
Me neither. It'll be a big week for both of these teams.
It will be.
A lot could change by the next time we talk. Depending on how Nebraska's road trip goes to Orwa. And
it took me a second.
Yeah. And depending on how Creighton's road trip goes to Villanova and then to rowdy Providence.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Half Court Press. We will talk to you guys next week. But if you want to read all of Wilson's stuff, read all of my stuff, read everyone else's stuff, please go to omaha.com, and we will talk to you guys soon. See ya.